Welcome to Middle Fingers Up. I am your host, Kieran, and let me ask you guys this. So, how many times does something like this happen where a song from your past comes on and before you even realize it, you're not here anymore, you're somewhere else, you're a different age, you're a different version of yourself, and it's not just the memory, it's like you feel it, you smell it, you remember the snacks you're having, all your senses sort of get heightened. You might feel it in your chest, your parts of your body, and in the way that your mood shifts without you even choosing it to shift. And it's almost like this time machine that you didn't ask to go in. You kind of go in there and you go to the past and you're like, oh my God, here I am at 6 years old or 10 years old or whatever age it is, 19 at the clubs, wherever it was back in the day. And sometimes that memory, that time machine ride feels great. And you're like, this was amazing. I remember this. This is bringing me back to a good time. And then there's times where maybe without that comfort and that familiarity, you feel a little bit of heaviness and maybe even a little heavier than you used to. And I think sometimes when that happens, you start to realize, oh, maybe there's something a little more underneath this, something a little more layered to what this memory is bringing up. So what is all this? What am I saying to you? Well, today we're getting into this term behind all this, and you may have come across this on your socials, but we're going to talk about neural nostalgia. What a cool little term, right? So what's that actually mean? What is the whole thing behind neural nostalgia in our body, in our brain, how it connects when music takes us back, like the way I just described. And I think what it means when those same songs start to feel a little different over time. So how maybe I felt when I heard that song at 15 compared to now at 45, things shift over time. And there's lots of reasons of the in-betweens of how and why things shift in us with that. And to have this lovely conversation, I'm joined with someone who brings such a thoughtful and layered lens to all of this, Nikki Roy. So Nikki is someone you've probably come across her feeds. She shares fashion, music, and that very nostalgic, specific kind of millennial parts of you that just hit right. But what I also really appreciate about Nikki is that her work isn't just about the aesthetic. It's rooted in something much deeper. So she has a background with a master's in Arts and Counselling, where expression is a huge part of how she works. She has worked with clients who are battling eating disorders. She's worked with clients who are working through body image issues and supporting women 25 and up who are navigating the identity. Learning, unlearning, but I also feel like mostly it's a lot of that understanding how we become who we are and figuring that part out. And when you look at her content through that lens, it makes so much sense because it's not just about what we wore and why we wore it or why we listened to what we listened to. It's again about who we were and who we are becoming. So Nikki, I am so excited to have you on today. How are you?
I'm great. That was also like the most epic introduction I've ever had. So thank you.
That's always my favorite part of the whole thing. So I like put some time into that because I this is sort of how I feel when I meet the guests that I bring on. And so this is my way of sharing the vibes that I got from you when I came across the work that you do online. So you're the epic one. That's why it sounds so great. So maybe before we get into it, you can just start off and let people know where they can find you, where they can follow you, if they want some of that nostalgia as well. Where's the best place?
Yeah, so I'm most prominent on Instagram and TikTok. And so on there, I post a lot of music content, like just singing to like classic good old songs, kind of like millennial lore. So things that we like can all relate to with certain songs, but then also a lot of content just around how do we like take up space and how do we learn who our identity is, why we have these like things that come up around insecurities or emotions or this desire or urge to like not be embarrassed or not be cringe or not like be different or be seen or perceived in some way. So I post mostly on there. My name, I guess, handle is Nikki Roy Collection. And I picked that because it's kind of like a collective learning who we are, self expression, creativity in whatever way that is. For me, it's mostly fashion and music and just how I express, but that can be literally for anything. It's just kind of general terms of how we can show up in the world as like our most aligned, authentic selves.
Yeah, that's so well said. And when we did our consult, when you talked a little bit about your work and why I was like, you are the mental health stylist. Like that is literally your your background. So I love how you do it. I love how you take the things that you love. And there's such a deep, as we were saying in the intro, meaning behind it. And that's the part that connected me. I was like, okay, there's a mental health work going on here. So that is probably where I think a lot of people connect with you and feel like, okay, there's some truth to what you're saying. There's a lot of connection. And just because we mentioned the time machine in the intro, maybe we can just start with, for some reason, I've started asking this to my guests. And this is what I had when I had sent my long, weird message that I actually ended up calling you too, right? At like 5 a.m. Oh my gosh.
It was like a video call.
Oh my gosh. I was yeah. So sometimes when I'm waking up in the morning, I'm like, okay, my 15 minutes of work is like just who's on Instagram, and you come across people when your algorithm works. And so I found you. I was like, oh my God. So I'm writing this message to you, and I literally hit video call, and I was like, oh my God, can you imagine at 5 a.m.? Like, who is this weirdo? But you still responded back, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
But that's what connected me, because when I came across your work, your page, I was like, oh my God, this is like the time machine. And this is the question I asked people at the beginning of the episode, which is, if you were to get into this time machine that I built and it's safe, I promise, there's airbags and everything. So you go in and you're going to pick an age to go and visit yourself. What age would you pick, and what would you go back and tell little or whatever age, Nikki?
Mm-hmm. There's so many ages I would go back to, but when I think about this question specifically, I think I would go to around 12 or 13. Yeah. And I pick that age because I really felt like a shift in myself around 14, 15, just in, what I was getting into, the decisions I was making, really kind of like how I was behaving, what was happening, where I was finding essentially safety and like belonging, and how I felt important in the world, which is like everything for a teenager. So I would go back to like just before that, 12, 13, and like honestly really just hug her. Like, who doesn't want to just go and hug like your little self that's about to go into some really hard times? But also like really, I guess, try to give her some messaging and acceptance and love around just being herself, like knowing that like that is what makes her so cool and makes her so unique, and that there's going to be all this pressure from so many different angles around who you have to be, how you have to look, how you have to fit in, what you need to do, what you need to give, who you need to be available to, what your role is, what society expects of you. All of these things are going to come crashing down, and you're also going to get introduced to like really risky behaviors and partying and alcohol, and all of these things are about to come flooding at you. And so I would really want to just like try to ground her as much as possible in knowing that like you can create your own lane, and there's going to be pressures, and it's okay to just be different. It's okay to want something else, and we don't have to sacrifice so much of ourselves on the pursuit of acceptance. And so I would try to get into that era right before all of those things came in.
Oh man, right? That would be amazing. Like just that, even that, it's such a huge developmental milestone of literally identity phase at that age of I want to be everything that my family's not. Who am I? You know, you're questioning religion, you're questioning whatever beliefs you grow up in. So I think to get a message like that from you would be, I know if I got that from myself, well, do you think that she'd believe you?
She'd probably be like, I don't know if she would. She'd probably be like, yeah, right. But I think that we can't imagine something unless we can see it or have it role modeled or can imagine ourselves in that. So if it's not ever there, we don't ever know. So whether I would believe it or not, I would still have the possibility, or I would still know that that's something that I could do. Whereas like looking back, I don't know, I might have had that at some point, but I don't know if I had it as like that intense of a messaging or that straightforward, that blunt. It might have been like more soft or, you know, delivered around the edges in some sort of way. You know, you can be whoever you want to be. Okay, well, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Like something more specific. So even just knowing that that would have been laid out to me, I think it would have, maybe I would have saw that as more of an option when I started to take some wrong turns.
Yeah.
Maybe.
No, I think that makes sense. And I came across like an article on my phone this morning, and it was a mental health professional that said that they have interviewed over 200 young people, and all parents are doing this wrong, which is there's so much emphasis. And I know there was this in my time, probably your time too, where academics and education and your future planning is really, really consistently discussed with your child from a very young age. And it becomes the kind of the dialogue between parents and their kids, but very rarely are parents giving space for their kid to be able to feel the feels, and parents are quick to stop the bad feels or whatever, end a conversation, and your body's holding on to it. And so we have to talk less and let our kids like answer and figure out what is going on for me. And I was saying this to someone the other day. I was having dinner with a woman that's like literally 20 years younger than me. And I was like, I hope with my kids, the thing that they take from their childhood is trusting their gut, because a lot of us were taught on conditional love and you listen to adults and do what adults say. So there wasn't a lot of expression. There wasn't a lot of exploring. And we are the most creative beings at this young age, especially at adolescence. So I think that kind of a message to little you, I definitely feel like it'd be impactful. And I think even to like adults who are parenting, just like letting our kids start to think, okay, what does this mean for me? What was that like when I experienced that? You know, and more so of just, I'm here for you. Take your time, be upset, versus it's okay, let's move on. If you want to add to that or whatnot.
Yeah, I would just add that what we're really understanding now is like emotional development is the most important thing for adolescents and youth to develop. And there's a big difference between like, I was loved in my family and there was a lot of love and we all loved each other, and I had an emotional development. And so those two things can be completely different. And I find like, you know, as a therapist, a lot of people are like, but I had a great family, and, you know, I had a great childhood and my parents really loved me. I'm like, that's amazing. I believe that. And did they like develop your emotional maturity or like allow those things and help you understand what emotions meant? Because a lot of people can't seem to understand why they struggle with things because they had such a loving family, and they're two completely different things. And so a lot of the time that gets confusing for a lot of us. And so it's difficult to go, well, did we actually get that emotional development, especially as adolescents, youth, teenagers, when that's like something that's just screaming at us? I mean, all we want is to belong and to fit in and feel cool and valuable, but we don't know what's going on in our bodies and how to actually feel and understand things.
That's so well said. I agree with you. Let's shift a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about a little bit of you back to that, we talked about time machine. So you grew up in Alberta, a small town,
Yep.
before you made it out to the big city in a different province. So when you talk a little bit just about what you were saying about the emotional development for you, like, can you paint a picture of what growing up in a small town was like for you, and sort of what shaped you, culture, music, expectations, everything in between?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I grew up in a really small town, like 3,000 people in Alberta. And a lot of my experiences, I think, were just kind of that bubble. Like, it was like, this is the bubble of what a small town is. There was, mostly all white people, mostly all from kind of the same culture, the same political lens, the same values. And so you're kind of placed in this bubble where all you see are reflections of yourself or what other people are kind of doing. And that's also reflecting you. So your idea of like what maybe life or culture or expression or value or the world is quite narrow. Like, I always describe it as like blinders. So I always kind of had this like zest for wanting more out of life. I was always kind of this person that like pushed the bubble, pushed the narrative, always wanted to do things and always wanted to do things on my own. I was like highly independent at such a young age, which, that's kind of like a pro and a con. You're like, why was I so highly independent? But also, I love that about myself. I actually went to New Zealand when I was 15 for a 6-month exchange because I just, even at that young of an age, I was like, this small town is like constraining me. Like, I felt trapped. I felt like claustrophobic almost there. But at the same time, that town was like meeting all of my needs around feeling claustrophobic through like partying and drinking and doing really reckless things. And even that was a big value. We didn't have a transit system. We didn't have a movie theater. We had nothing. We had partying in a field. And so what came with that was like a lot of pressures around what you had to do, who you had to be. A lot of dangerous things were happening. And so that was just kind of like the lens that I had. And I knew that I wanted to expand my world and I wanted to expand what that looked like. I just didn't really know how to do that. And so I kind of took a bit of a up and down, flip flop, back and forth type of path through my 20s. Like, it was not clear for me at all. I was like in university, out of university, in, out, moving here, like I was all over the place. And I look back at it now and I'm like, wow, I was really just trying to find something that felt more like me because I felt so restricted here. But then I kept going back because it was my safe place. And so I did all this bouncing around, but music was such a powerful thing for me. I grew up on like a farm 20 minutes away from my tiny town. So to drive to school was a 25-minute drive just through prairie fields. So all you're doing is listening to music, just listening to music in your car. And my car became my safe space from 16. And so I would spend hours driving every day. And we'd just drive around, listen to music, drive around, listen to music, drive to school, drive to practice, drive to home. Everything was around music and my car. And it was like the first thing that really gave me like freedom. I felt so free in my car listening to music. And still, when I hear those songs, I'm right back in my Jeep. Like, the subs are just banging. Just
oh, there's Nikki coming down this rural road.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And like, I go back there all the time now. I'm 34 and I like, in my body, in my brain, I'm always back in my Jeep, like cruising as adolescent, because that's when I felt free and like I could finally kind of escape this like confined space that I felt like I was in.
That's such a wonderful story that you shared, and it makes so much sense why a lot of your videos are in your car right now. So is that why you did that? Because of your love for being in your car as a kid driving around?
Pretty much. I mean, I kind of came into that style of content really accidentally and organically, because when I find myself driving, that's all I do is I put on my music and I'm just vibing in my car. And there was one song that I was like, oh my God, I want to like record this and send it to a friend or something like that. And I recorded it and I was like, damn, I look so happy. And I was like, I'll just post a little caption on it, posted it, and it just like took off. And I was like, oh, I think this is like my lane. I think this is what I'm good at. And I kind of just like, because it's so natural for me. And all my friends were always like, your car was the funnest place to be, or like, we always wanted your playlists, or like, you always had the music. And like, that was just who I was. I was always the driver. I don't like being passenger. I will drive 10 out of 10 times. And so that was just my identity. And it just fits so perfectly for me.
Oh, that's awesome. That's so cute that your friends felt comfort in that with you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're figuring out where you need to be, bouncing around, as you were saying, going to school, being home, all these places. And then somewhere along your journey, you end up in a different province.
Yeah.
So what brought you out there to BC?
My husband and
swapped.
we got married in 2019, and then COVID hit, and it was 2021, and we were like, we both kind of have this, like, we want more. Like, it was always just this like motivation for more in life. And we were like, I think we need to move. Like, we don't feel super aligned here. He also grew up in the small town I did. So we grew up together, and we were like, this just doesn't fit. It doesn't feel like a reflection of us anymore. Like, this just feels like a mismatch. We're not kind of going in the same direction as a lot of the people that were in our life. We had this desire to just like find some part of ourselves that was unmet yet. Like, it just was this intuitive feeling that we just didn't really belong there anymore. And I think I was kind of leading the charge a little bit more, because that's how I was. I never wanted to land permanently back around my hometown. So I was like, this is very, very not permanent for me. And so when we kind of like proposed this idea, we're like, well, why don't we just like go right in? Why don't we go to Vancouver? Like, let's just dive right in and go. And so we listed our house for sale, and we're like, what's the worst that can happen? We have to move back? Like, really? That's the worst that's going to happen. And so we listed it, sold within a month, and we actually bought an RV, and we pulled an RV out here through the mountains, and we parked it in a campground just like in White Rock. And we just were like, let's see kind of what is here for us. And that spiraled us down this like massive, in the last 4.5 years journey of a lot of unlearning, a lot of therapy, sobriety. We're both sober now for almost 2 years. There was some like ruptures that happened in our life, friendships, marriage, family, and it just took us down this huge road of kind of like unlearning, opening our eyes, healing, navigating what life was for us. And then it kind of just resulted in a really beautiful life that we have now. Businesses, entrepreneurship, a lot of success, a lot of healing, a lot of growth together. And I can't even like recognize the person I was before I moved here. I mean, I do, but I'm so different, and it feels like me. Like, I finally feel like me now. That version of me that felt so constrained all the time, I don't feel that anymore. And it's been like the most beautiful process, really just changing that life and trusting that no matter what happens, we'll be okay, rather than the fear of the change.
Yeah. It sounds like your move wasn't about location. It was about a becoming for you and your husband. And do you think geographically that had something to do with it? Like being part of a small town and then going to like this big community, and that was sort of part of all these different healing and unlearnings and all these things coming up for you guys?
Definitely. Kind of like what I said before, is you can't really imagine things unless you see them, unless you immerse in them. And so immersing in a community that was vibrant in culture and identity. We didn't really like, get to see that in those major development years. Like in our 20s and stuff, traveling and going about, of course, like you get more immersed in the world and diversity, but really like leaving and living in it, you got to experience and see and talk to people and meet families and other people and everybody that holds all these different identities and ways of expressing and living their lives. That really opens your eyes to exactly all of your unconscious biases, the ways and value systems that you were raised in, your immediate thoughts, your immediate like ways of thinking and feeling the world. And so all of those things were just kind of coming forward and you're like, holy shit.
It's like the floodgates just open, right?
Yeah. And just how people live their life, how relationships are here, the norms, the differences. It was just like, it really basically said like you can live your life however the fuck you want. So I hope I can swear.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't have to look like this. It doesn't have to be this tiny square, because that's all we saw.
Yeah.
And if you weren't in that square, you weren't doing something right. And then coming here was like, what, like, get out of that. Obviously there's still the pressure here, but for us coming into that, it exploded our world around what else and who you can be.
So what's something that when you look back to when you first moved out there to where you are now, when you look back, what's something that you learned about yourself that you don't think you would have learned had you not moved to, well, in this case, BC, but I think in general, I think I hear what you're saying, just pushing the envelope a bit, challenging yourself, being in spaces that you've never been in before. I'm from Surrey, so I know exactly what you're talking about, man. We have culture, we have community, we have a lot of different communities out there. Being in Calgary now, I think there's some things developing, but it's not the same. BC has and you lived in New Zealand for a short period of time. So just even the like lushness of coming back, because my husband grew up in Saskatchewan, and he at 20 went to New Zealand with a friend. They went for 3 months and apple picking and all this stuff. And then when he came back, he couldn't stay in rural Saskatchewan. He found his way to Vancouver as well, just needed to be around that greenery. And so that's interesting in itself too. But back to you answering the question that I asked you and then kept talking, which I still do after 3 years, but
no, it's all good. I think really the biggest thing that kind of gets reflected back is how you relate yourself into not only with yourself, but like to the context of the world, and what values, what thoughts, opinions, how you structure your life, how you think of yourself in that life, how you think of other people with different identities, other cultures. Because when you start to see it all, you start to get hit with all of the thoughts and feelings that come up for you unconsciously that was like built in your own nervous system around what safety was, right? And what we learn about what safety is throughout our childhood and adolescence is what is being reflected in our environment. And my environment was very small and very blinded and very white.
Yeah.
And so that really starts coming up around like, how do I relate to myself? How do I relate to other people? How do other people relate to me? How do I show up in these spaces? How do I be a safe person? How do I, understand how I was raised, or my values, or my automatic thoughts? Like, you just are really looking at yourself in the mirror with every interaction that you're having, down to like when you're driving, down to different businesses, nature, how people interact with each other. Like every single thing holds up a mirror, which you're now looking at every way that you built a relationship to yourself, and even how you address those things, right? Like how do I understand what's coming up for me from a place that's like compassionate? Because it can be really frustrating sometimes when it's like, oh, why do I have these thoughts? Or why do I have such self-deprecating thoughts, or thoughts about other people that I don't want to have, but all of a sudden I'm having? And like, why is this happening for me? And really understanding like the the systems that operate in our world of oppression, the white privilege system, so systems around race, identity, gender, all of those things in how they shape how we think and how we experience the world. And so when you then plop yourself into this beautiful multicultural system, you're like, oh, all of these things are now being reflected back on me, and I need to go figure that out, and I need to go and understand myself. Because if you don't put yourself in that position and that's not getting reflected back to you, a lot of your unconscious structure, your unconscious foundation just stays unconscious, and you just keep operating from that lens.
So, like, I think kudos to you for talking about this. And for the record, you brought up white before I did, so this is amazing. It's a first. But honestly, I really appreciate hearing. It's very refreshing, first of all, to hear you talk like this, because I think when you grow up in the world that you did, and, around this whiteness and same, everyone's kind of the same. And then you go to this other community where it's almost like that big fish in a little pond to a little fish in the big sea or whatever. Like, you're like, okay, where do I fit in this? But I think even in that process, there's a lot of moments to not go where you went. Like your defense mechanisms naturally as we are built as humans, they creep up, and we do everything in our power to follow that and not go against it. So it's like, I'm not racist. I don't think this way. Or even when you're questioning and sitting with, why am I having these feelings about myself and these other people or that other thing over there? It's scary for people to go and do, and not as many as who claim they do actually do that. So why did you do that whole thing in the mirror? Why did you go there? Like, what was in it for you to want to go through that kind of huge, like, literally it is floodgates opening, and you're trying to like grasp onto wherever you can because maybe the things you were taught weren't accurate or what. And look, I'm saying this because I was a white brown girl, and I came here at 20 from Vancouver. So my whiteness just got stronger and stronger in Calgary. And my floodgates opened a few years ago where I had my own experience of like, holy crap, I am brown. And what does that mean? And my husband and I, we've been together for 25 years. And in the last 2 years, he would say, you're so different. Like, you are not the same woman that I'm like, I know, right? Like that's not who I am. So I can appreciate the process, but I know it's hard. And you lose people in your world. And when you look at oppression and you look at what's going on in the world, I was saying to my sister and sister-in-law the other day, I'm like, I just remember that time when I used to be so happy. Like, we were joking, right? Because it's not all rainbows and butterflies when you start to do this work. And that's not a bad thing. It's necessary. Mm-hmm. So for you, why did you decide to continue to do it? Because you didn't have to. People don't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. It is still like a choice to be like, I'm going to do this work, because you can stay away, and shame comes up, right? Like, and that's a hard thing to work through, shame and ego. So facing that means you kind of have to work through that. And that's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
For me, I would say that I had some really amazing experiences in my adolescence with culture and people that didn't look like me. So like when I traveled to New Zealand, I also did traveling in my early 20s. I went to like Thailand, and I went to Cambodia, and I went over to Europe, and I went to Peru. And so I had this like, I feel like it was just innate in me, this intuitive, like, I want to be immersed. I want to be with people. I've always loved people. It's what drove me to be a therapist. And so I had these like really beautiful experiences in these other countries where I got to just meet other humans. And I was like, this is amazing. Like, I love meeting other humans. I love learning about culture. I feel like I don't have any, and that sucks, and like, I'm German and Polish. And not even that long ago, my grandpa came over here, but our culture got lost. It just gets gone. And I'm like, I don't even know what it is. I was always envious of it. And I was like, I love experiencing with other people if they're willing to experience with me, and if that feels safe. And so I always had that. Like, for me, it was never an option. I was like, this is what I have to do. there was no option for me, because turning the other way meant I'm going back to this like blinded place. And that was deeply painful and deeply uncomfortable. So the only way for me was that way, even though there was mountains and hurdles and I had to do a lot of work and reflecting of my own. But then also, like, some of the people I love most are Black and brown and queer. And I'm like, I love you guys so much.
Well,
Like,
thank you.
and like I really, really honor and want to value being a safe person, and want to value being somebody that is going to do that work myself, but also sit there and like listen and be willing to be wrong and be willing to show up if I've done something hurtful. And I think because of my own work with my own relationship to self allows me that kind of strength to be like, okay, of course I'm going to do something wrong. Of course that's going to happen. Of course I'm going to end up like maybe hurting someone with any identity. And that's okay, because when we both sit together, then we can work through that. Whereas if I'm always trying to come from this place of like, I know best and I will always, that's again the whiteness, then then it doesn't work. And that's not humans sitting together. That's systems coming into play. And so for me, it was never an option.
So have you had that? Have you had that moment with a Black or a brown or a person of color friend or someone where you have had to have that tense kind of moment of them feeling safe and comfortable enough to say, Nikki, just so you know, this thing you said or this belief you have or whatever it is that, you know, is happening is actually creating this, you know, microaggression, or that's a racisty thing, or I don't know, however that was. I have not yet been able to do that. So I can only imagine how maybe that would go. But have you had someone be able to have that kind of conversation with you? Like, have you had that experience?
Yeah. So one of my very best friends here is a brown woman, and we have developed such a like beautiful relationship where we bring these types of things into our friendship and into our conversations. And I can't remember exactly what it would have been, but there has been like a couple things over the last few years where we've kind of sat down, and it's either been me where I'm like, hey, was that okay? Because I'm kind of feeling a little bit uneasy about that. And like, as soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, oh my God. And so I'll check in with her, and she's also checked in with me where she's like, hey, like, when you said that, like, maybe we could say it this way. And I was like, absolutely. Tell me more about how I can say it differently. And so we've been able to like develop a relationship where we just kind of like check in with each other, but we also call each other in really beautifully, where I'm either checking in or she's checking in. And it's created to a place now where it's just like a seamless conversation. The first couple times it was a bit clunky because we were, you know, like we're trying to not hurt each other, but at the same time, like we're both therapists and we were like, we really value this.
A lot of clarifying questions being asked in the moments.
Yeah, we're like just two therapists here talking about all of like the intersections of like race and things like that. So I feel very, very grateful and privileged that like I have those relationships and those connections. Yeah. Because it makes it not as scary when you have a few times where you're actually able to have a safe conversation, but where I'm also willing to be like, yeah, that was not okay to say. And I'm so sorry. And this is maybe how I got there. And I'm committed to not doing that again. Yeah. And we keep going.
Yeah, that's great. Good for you too. And I think what you say really is like the intention often isn't there. I mean, obviously we have our outwardly racist people, and that's like one extreme that to me is easy to because you see it from a mile away and you're like, okay. But sometimes it's in those deep relationships like friendships or, you know, in an interracial relationship where you have a lot more lying on this. So you're like, I don't really want to disrupt it. And based on seeing sometimes other things happening, sometimes for me as a person of color, it's like, I don't know if I'm going to even bring this up because now I'm going to be asked, well, give me an example, and now I have to give you 5,000 versus you just hearing what I'm saying. So my husband and I can now kind of have those, but I really have not been able to, with white friends, go to that place, because it started to become like every single conversation was that there wasn't work on their part, or they thought they were doing the work and whatnot. And so it's just like exit stage left. And I appreciate for people that can stay in it, because that's the ultimate goal, is like, we don't all have to like cancel our relationship. Can we come back to it? What I know now is very different than maybe 2-3 years ago. So good for you to be able to sit in a room, even when your intent obviously wasn't that, you're not meaning to make the comment, and good for your friend to have the courage to be able to say, you know what, just wondering if we can try it this way. Because that's what, like, we're, like you said, we're not going into this perfect. You're not perfect, your girlfriend's not perfect, and so like, why are we even pretending to be? There's lots of things that we all have to learn. And so I think that's always a lesson in these things, is we're not coming at this perfect. We all have a lot of work to do. So I love hearing that. That's encouragement for me for the future when I make new friends.
Yeah.
But maybe we can shift into just like you're talking about as a therapist, like you do some amazing work, women 25 and you've done the eating disorder, body image work. You talk about body image and just those scripts we've all had ingrained in our life with magazines and all those kinds of things growing up. And you do a lot of this identity work, a lot of what you talked about in your own growing up and figuring out. So it kind of makes sense that that's your area with women. And so I'm just curious if like, what are women coming in today wanting to unlearn and wanting to build more understanding around when it comes to identity? What are some like themes that you're experiencing?
A lot of the time, what brings people, I mean, body image is a big thing. So I want to like myself. I want to like my body. I don't want to be so fixated on what I'm eating or how I look. It's ruining my life. It's everything. It's everywhere. So that's a really big one. Another big one is women coming in with kind of just this script of like, I don't know who I am. I don't know who I am, and I don't like my life. And this is what I thought I was supposed to do. I thought I was supposed to get married and like have kids or like live a certain way. And it's not that I don't like my kids or don't like being married, but it's just I'm not happy. And like, I don't know why, so a lot of people with just kind of this general sense of I'm not really enjoying my life, a lot of insecurities. So whether that's around like our appearance, our identity, our expression, how we show up in life, anxieties, this intense fear around being seen, being embarrassed, being perceived. So a lot of these things coming up for people. And then that is often what then ripples down to it impacts like not chasing their dreams, not traveling, not finding hobbies, not changing their life, being really afraid to make these kind of large decisions like leaving a marriage or saying no to something or moving or, these things that really just kind of hold them back and they feel stuck. A lot of people feel stuck. And so like trying to like peel back those layers into what is happening for women kind of in this 25 to 40 age range where they're like, I thought this is what I was supposed to do. And why am I just like terrified to just live my life and be seen and I don't feel happy?
Oh, you know what? Like, huge kudos to those women that are showing up and wanting to address that. Because I think that is the hardest part, is coming to some realization of, oh, I'm not happy. Or, I think a lot of women realize like the life they're living was chosen for them, whether it's family, culture, or society saying this is what you have to do, and you do it. And I talk to adult women diagnosed with ADHD, and a lot of them are like, man, did I mask and follow and please and all that stuff? And now here I am trying to take this mask off. And I think it's scary because this is probably like, I don't know if you relate to this, but the version of you that people know all your life and who you were, and now you move somewhere else and you do all this work and you're a different person on so many levels. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that's scary because people from our past that continue to be in our present time only know us in the version that we were. And so then it's like, you kind of feel like you got to go back and you're like, man, I know that this isn't who I am anymore, but I don't know how to show this person or be this person. So I think there's like a lot of complicating factors going on in trying to unravel where did I lose who I am?
Oh my God, yes. Or like, did it ever develop? You know, and like that was such a piece of freedom moving here, was like I got to reinvent myself and I got to like be this version of who I wanted to be. And I tell you what, like I right now have 25,000 followers on Instagram, and the only people that I get worried about thinking things of me when I post are the maybe 50 people from my hometown.
Yes.
You know, and that's it, because like everybody else I don't care about. It's that tiny little group of people that I don't even talk to anymore, because I'm not the same version. I'm not at all. And it's just that lives in you, because that was my safety development as a teenager. And so that itself too, we work on therapy sessions how to post an Instagram picture or reel, because it's like the fear, judgment, embarrassment. What are people going to think? What are people going to say? Even though your mind is in your 30s, your nervous system is 16 sometimes with things like that.
Okay. Yes.
And so you're experiencing this like intense feeling around like, I can't do this, because what if somebody thinks something, sees something, misinterprets me, perceives me, judges me? And that age time is when we have such a deep development of identity and safety in our nervous system. It's the same operating system as the music and the neural nostalgia. It's just showing up in a different way. And so even learning how to understand what's happening in my body, connect to it, feel it, regulate it, and then align with myself today, that's a whole ass process sometimes, where I'm like,
you literally just like took all of my notes. It's like you know exactly, I mean, this is your niche, your expertise, because that was my question, was like, A, are there parts of our identity that we're just not meant to outgrow? And B, you know, whether we are meant or not, there are parts that still stay in our core with us. And so as you talked about body, like, okay, so I know I'm worthy, but my body tells me if I'm safe, and I'm not safe enough to feel, you know, to catch up. So where you are intellectually isn't quite where you are with your body. And I don't know how many of us are tuned to that. Like when women come in and see you, is that something a lot of them are learning, the connection between body and mind? It's not just a yoga class. Like these are patterns and habits and experiences that are shaping us, and that are kind of pop out when we don't kind of expect it. So is that where a lot of women come and learn a lot about that with you?
Yeah, of course. I mean, and I, as a therapist, work from also like a somatic nervous system body lens. So it's not just like what we can understand intellectually, because most people come to this place where they're like, I know I shouldn't be caring about this, but I can't get myself to not. Or like, I know I shouldn't be embarrassed about this. Logically, I know this. Emotionally, I can't do it. And so we largely experience this like disconnection between what's happening in our nervous system and what's happening in our brain. And because again, when we think about like the systems of what impacts us, is we were largely taught to disconnect from our body. Even going back to, were we taught how to feel our feelings as a kid? Or was it more just about how do you deal with it here? Or did we learn how to be in our bodies? No. So now we're grown up into adults where our nervous system is detecting all of these things that are emotionally unsafe. It doesn't just have to be physically unsafe right now, but it can be, am I emotionally unsafe? And that could be embarrassment. My body might literally be giving me the fight or flight response from embarrassment. And that can trickle down to an Instagram post. And so the connection between how do we actually not just stay in our brain, but go into our bodies to be able to connect to ourselves somatically in our nervous system, to walk our nervous system out of that flight or fight response and into a sense of safety so that we can then access our current self and our current values and how we want to show up for ourselves. But oftentimes, if we don't know how or understand what's happening, a lot of my work is teaching people how to connect to their body and get in their body and what's happening in their body and how do we live more in the body, because that's really what's holding you back. It's not necessarily up here all the time. Sure, it is. There's a lot of work to do with thoughts, mindsets, all that. Mm-hmm. But our body will overpower us all the time. It always wins. And so if we don't know why that's happening or how to access it, we come up to that block over and over and over.
So I think this is a good place to transition to neural nostalgia, because in many ways you have sort of been hitting that throughout this episode with going back, talking to our inner self, all that. So let's hear from you. What is neural nostalgia and how you connect that with the body and the mind and everything in between?
Yeah, so it's essentially our nervous systems identify sound, sight, smell, taste, all those things, which is why certain meals can feel really nostalgic, certain movies can feel really nostalgic, and the same way that music can feel really nostalgic. And so because that adolescent period, around like 12 to our early 20s, it's not an exact date for everyone, but that general time, that period is really when like our identity formation and that emotional intensity is being developed. And so I like to think of it as the blueprint. The blueprint was in the nervous system and the brain were being developed. And so if in that blueprint, music is really like hitting home, like there's a song that you're just like, this is me and this is my experience and like this is hitting home, or this is attached to a certain memory, our nervous system and brain is like logging that as something highly important. And it's almost creating these little like extra on fire firework kind of reaction instead of just your regular reaction. So the brain's like memory and reward system is like supercharged at that point. It's like really active. And because of that, whatever we're imprinting at that time can then be ignited years down in our life. And so when we have that feeling, when like a song comes on in my 30s and I feel it in my gut, I feel it like in my throat, I feel it in my movement. Sometimes I think of a memory, not all the time, but even if you don't go back to a specific memory, your body is experiencing a rush of those neurochemicals, oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and that's like rushing all through you because it's like, oh, the fireworks, and that's where it's going back to. And it's like, this is a great memory that we have. And so we feel it in our whole body, and it allows us to kind of experience this like euphoric time of joy. I mean, it can also work in the opposite direction. If we have typically harmful or negative or traumatic experience, that it can bring that up too. But if we can kind of figure out what those sweet spots are for us, then we can actually use it as a way of like getting in our body, coping, finding motivation because of the way that it's connected to that blueprint.
That's amazing how songs, music can bring us back into an old nervous system state. Yeah. So it's sort of what you talked about earlier too, like your nervous system might still be at 16 or 15 or in some shape or form, but there's parts of you that are like outgrown things and are developing and whatnot. And I wonder like for how many of us do we not realize, like in your work with your clients, what's the challenge in helping people meet you with that information and be like, okay, yes, this is the thing that's connected and coming up for me. How do people respond to that?
It's usually awareness. That's usually the piece that we're blowing right past. Yeah, because it's like, I didn't even know that was happening. Yeah. I mean, I don't recognize that. It's a lot of the time too, when we work on emotions, people are like, I'm just angry and punching all of a sudden. Well, it wasn't all of a sudden. Your body was giving you this, and that. But because we're so ingrained to disconnect from that, it feels so sudden. So the awareness piece of like, well, what was happening in your body? I don't know. I don't know how to recognize that. Or like, how do I stop doing this? Well, we have to build in the awareness first, because if we can't connect to our body, then we have to build that in. And so oftentimes it starts with, okay, well, we're going to start after the fact. So after something happens, then we're going to reflect on it. And then we're slowly going to bring that back to, can we do it in the moment? And then we're slowly going to do it, can we feel it coming on? And so some of the simplest things to help my clients get connected in their body is like, you're just going to wash your hands and you're going to feel the cold. You're going to smell the soap. You're going to take a second, close your eyes. Can you identify like what finger the water's on? Can you like, what does the temperature, what does the smell remind you of? And they're like, that seems so silly. I'm like, it kind of is, but it helps you teach yourself how to feel in your body. And it helps you like actually connect to the sensory experience that is happening, because right now, like I can feel like my left foot is tingly because I have my legs crossed,
Yeah.
but I might not have known that until I just brought connection to my body, thinking of my hands. And then I was like, oh, my leg is tingly and like, I'm kind of itchy here. But if we don't bring that intentional awareness to like what is actually happening in our body, we miss it.
And why do we not bring it? Why have we lost that, forgotten it, not built awareness? What would be the reason for that?
Yeah, well, I think part of it is survival. We can't be like connected to our body at all times because we need to be like alert and we need to be figuring out like what's happening. But from systems and sociocultural perspective, is emotional development is not really taught. So we're taught to stay in our heads. We're taught to overthink things, push it away, not feel it, whatever. We're taught to like conform. And so it doesn't matter what you think or you feel or what your experience is. Are you thinking and feeling and experiencing what the world wants you to be? And so we're kind of always taught to disconnect from self. You think about like kids that are really sad about something. It's like, don't be sad about that. You shouldn't be sad about that. Just be happy about that. And that's coming from like a good intention, of course. And sometimes we're going to do that. But what it's telling the kid is, I'm not supposed to be sad. My feelings are wrong. This isn't what I'm supposed to be feeling. I need to do something else. So we're always kind of like pulling ourselves out of our experience into something else. And then there's the pressure around what is a good enough career, what's a good enough partner, what's a good enough way to live your life, what's a good enough salary, a good enough car, a good enough house, all of these things that are going. It doesn't matter what you want, what you feel, and what you like. Is it what the rest of the world wants, or what your family wants, or what your friend wants, or whatever? Something else is happening. We're taught value comes from other people, not inherent. And so it's really hard to connect here.
Yeah, that is like bang on. So well said. It's so true. And you come from different communities, cultures, you want to be a collective, all these sorts of things are important. But then we do lose ourselves in it. And it's like finding this balance of where do I fit in this? And I want to show up for these people that I care about. I think a mother probably is like the like biggest example. You become a mother and your life you're taught is never really about you. And some moms really sacrifice. I wasn't that good of a mom. I was like, but there's a lot of this sacrifice and this like, okay, give this. And then I think protection as well. We think we're doing, like you said, the good and right thing by protecting our kids, protecting each other, by withholding information or getting over it. And we don't do ourselves justice because I think our body is actually experiencing it still. So like we've turned it off, as you've said, from the brain and the mind, but then the body's still grieving in some. I had a woman on a little while ago. She's a friend, and she told me her dad passed away over 6 years ago. And she's like, as soon as in the recent time she felt she was worthy enough, and even just doing basic hygiene, getting a therapist, she's like, I can't tell you how this weight that I didn't realize I put on grief weight, how I lost it because my body was carrying so much stress, so much unfinished business. And I'm like, that's such a beautiful example of what happens. And as you said, our body takes over. And so it's still happening. It's just a matter of, do we want to meet each other with it? So, okay. So for you, if you were going to go back to, like, if we made this personal, if you were going to go back to that, you know, your nostalgic moments of your childhood, adolescence, 20s, whenever that is, do you have like a list, like a top 5 songs you grew up with that still hit, or you go to and you feel all those feels and have the vibes, the good vibes, I would imagine, but hey, throw in the other ones too, is all good. Do you think you could produce a list?
That's like, it's so hard to produce 5 songs. I'm like, I can give you 5. You know, there's a couple songs that I'm like, yes. Tomorrow I'm going to be like, wish we did this one. And they're going to change all the time. But I was kind of like an emo kid, like punk rock, alternative rock music was like my jam. And so the song Animal I Have Become by 3 Days Grace, like, just ignites this inner, I don't even animal, I guess, inside me. When I sing that song in my car, like, I'm like, anyone who's watching me right now is like, is really needing this right now. Even though I could be having like just the most normal day, I'm like just screaming it. That song, no matter what, gets me going all the time. Taking Back Sunday and Make Damn Sure is one of my favorite songs as well. That song has a really like beautiful connection to my best friend in high school. We used to drive around and sing that song all the time. And so every time I hear it, I'm back in my Jeep again with her singing it. And so that is like a really prominent song. Linkin Park. No Notes.
Yeah.
Anything from Linkin Park.
Yep.
So amazing. I think just the story with millennials as well. And, you know, everything that happened with Chester and mental health. It was just like, you could feel the pain in those songs. And listening to those songs from like 16 to 20 felt like you were just understood perfectly.
Yeah.
And so the metal in it and like, oh, it's just like magic to my ears.
Yeah,
when I hear
I would agree with Linkin Park. Absolutely. Yes. Yeah.
And then one that I've actually like rediscovered lately is like Avril Lavigne's first couple albums.
Yes.
And like, I'm just like, wow. It's one of those things where, and this is a comment a lot of people leave as well, where they're like, I had the lyrics memorized, but I had no idea what they meant until I was like in my 30s. You're singing every word for word, and then you're like, yeah, like, yes, oh my God. Like, we didn't realize.
Yeah.
Because you just can't at that age. Like,
totally. Yeah.
how impactful the lyrics are, but like, losing grip and like, I'm with you, like, you're just like, holy, these do something to me. And I think too, when I first heard those songs, like 12, 13, I didn't have the experiences to relate to them, but now I have the experiences to relate to them. And so it's almost like experiencing the song again, but with this like neural nostalgic light up nervous system. And so it's really, really cool to hear. That is
so cool. Yeah. Is that all 5? Did we hit all 5? Yeah, you did good.
4 or 5.
Do you have any more?
Really just any like alternative rock, like Third Eye Blind, Six, you know. Those songs are just so good. And that was like my mom's genre of music. And so I always just like the back of her car, you know, those are kind of the vibes where I hear like Never Let You Go and Semi-Charmed Life and like all those just kind of like boppy alternative rock. I'm like, oh, I'm just back, you know, vibing with my mom.
Yeah, there was like good alternative rock for sure. Like that was my era too. I loved the rap later. But, and obviously like when you're clubbing, then you have like a different vibe, but they're like Papa Roach, like Cut My Life. Like there's so many songs, as you were talking about Linkin Park, where you're like, yeah, man, like you get me so hard right now. And I think I worked in crisis and trauma for a long time with young people, and music was like the number one thing adolescents just could not live without. That's the question we'd get ahead of time. Like, can I bring my music with me? You know, because that was sort of the thing that got them through. And you're like, oh, I see what you're doing. You're building your little list for your future of the songs, the cry song. Like Chili Peppers, always, if you wanted a good cry and the world hated you, that was always, you know, like sometimes that you had to put the song on so that you could let it out. So yeah, there definitely was, those are really solid choices. So good ones. Good for you. Yeah, I love it. I love when you do that in your car. And I appreciate what you mean about the comments, because it probably really hits people, hey, like on a, oh my God, I haven't heard this. Or like you haven't heard a song for 20 years and then you hear it and you're like, how do I know all the words to this? And I can't remember the groceries that I was supposed to go pick up 5 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Like how do you explain that? How is that still up there? You know?
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that. But again, when you go back to development and identity, right? Like our brain is developed now. So like it's not necessarily putting a lot of like emphasis on our experiences that are happening the way that it did at that time. And especially if we add in like identity formation, emotional intensity, and brain development. And so we're like, I listened to this song on repeat over and over and over. Plus, we were in the era of like CDs or cassettes, right? A CD just played over and over and over and over. We didn't have Spotify playlists and this diversity of like, so we're like, yeah, I've listened to that song 100 times this week. And that was real. And so it was just, there was so much that we could relate to, you know, especially as like millennials. Music gave us our first access to like emotional language, to vulnerability, to somebody that's singing about pain and allowing that access, permission to feel that, because we didn't have really much permission to feel that anywhere else. It was like, don't feel that. And then in music, it was like, feel it. And we were like, we're feeling it. Like, we're really feeling it. And so there was just such a deeper connection in that crucial time period. And like, that's not to say that we can't find new music as adults. And it really hit. I still experience that too, where I'm like, wow, this really hits me. But it just was so much more prominent at that time.
Yeah, I love that. All right, man. I feel like I could talk to you all day. You are so knowledgeable. The way that you explain things, you definitely know your stuff. I feel your passion. And I love like how personal you got with us today. So it's really cool to meet the woman behind all that content. And I love that. Anything though that like you want to add or that you wish I had asked or, you know, that we didn't talk about and you're like, hey, I thought we were going to talk about this thing. I'm going to do the middle fingers up in a second, but anything that comes to mind that you want to like emphasize, add, or?
I think the only thing I would add is giving people this beautiful permission to use music as a way of connection and coping. And that it's something that is so powerful yet so simple. Like when I'm struggling with motivation to like do my chores, as soon as I hook up my music to my speaker and I have it playing, I'm like just up and at 'em doing it. And I'm just like happy, you know, and more excited. And like if I've had a hard day, I look forward to being in my car on the way home to listen to music and to like utilize it as something that allows you to get into your body. When you sing and when you hum, like you're activating that vagus nerve, which is connected to your nervous system. What do mothers do when their babies are crying? They're like humming and singing and they're doing things and they're bopping them around and you're dancing and like, so we are still those babies that like humming and singing and bopping around because it's regulating and it also connects us to our bodies. You can't have two thoughts at once. So I can't yell animal I've become and talk shitty to myself. So like intercept some of those things that are happening and like use music, use dancing, use those safe places, like whether it's your room or your car, to allow yourself some movement if that feels embarrassing. You know, like so many people struggle to just dance because it feels embarrassing. And so using that, allowing some permission and safety to re-enter your body, to be like, hey, I can do this. It's okay for me to like sing or take up space. or to just like have this music on. And a lot of people find a lot of freedom in it, and it's beautiful.
It's so true. Like we as children have such like a strong sense of imagination and creativity, and we lose it along the way. Either we get told it's got to go or somehow it goes away. And I think as adults, any that aren't in a creative kind of business are longing for it. And so we can't bottle all that kind of stuff up and not expect it to show up in odd ways and unsafe ways, unhealthy ways in our body. So if we can art whatever it is, and music is simple because we all have to walk, take the bus, drive, or what, if we can pop our headphones in and get a song or whatnot in there, I think that's a fantastic. And yeah, we do have Spotify now where we can have access to like 1 billion songs at once.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not the same as putting that CD or that tape side A, side B together, or recording from the radio station, you know,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
with a New Year's Day top 100, whatever songs. And then you're like, I got to record these because, yeah. So like all those kinds of ways that we connect with it, it's so different now, but I mean, it's still available. And I think that's the key. So, So lastly, MFU, what is the one thing that you would like to put your middle fingers up to?
Yeah, I thought about this because I was like, oh man, like everything, like every ism and like system of oppression. I'm just like, fuck you. But
Fuck you.
I think like in line with what I do and how I see it is like beauty standards, and just like the whitewashing of culture and beauty is horrific, and it just is so damaging and horrible. Just that in that is like the pursuit of thinness, fat phobia, conformity, sameness, putting everyone in a box around how they have to look, how they express what's beautiful. Like we have all these weird things around like what we deem as good enough or not, or beautiful, or, you know, expression, and this intense lens on what that needs to look like that just is erasing culture and like differences and what beauty looks like. And so beauty standards, I feel, are very like they encompass a lot of different areas that is extremely damaging. And I just imagine a world where people feel safe to be themselves and express in the ways that they want and how they look and their bodies and how they like their aesthetic and everything that they do, and how amazing that would be for people to celebrate that, and how that would really help people's identity and self-expression and the way that they see themselves in the world. So that's what I'm putting my middle finger up to.
That is so well said. And I feel like 2 hours ago, I was having a moment in my room getting ready. And so I really appreciate what you said. I want to cry because it's like, and if we don't have the capacity ourselves to have that in the moment, I hope that we have people around us. Like I luckily have my sister and sister-in-law in my group chat, and you know, they were like so great to work through that moment with me. And I was like, I gotta put this aside because I gotta get ready for this, and I cannot let this take up my day. Like this is my life, this is where I'm at, and I have to just like be. And so I really am grateful, because I do hear women talking about what strength is and pull-ups and planks and these things. And yeah, sure, that strength is important. But I think when we identify as having to have that flat look and the big butt and all this kind of stuff, I think we lose ourselves. And I am on a journey of finding that part of me. And it's a lot of work. So for women that can be around exactly what you said, oh my gosh, like, you know, we don't need that kind of misogyny, you know, that's telling us what our body needs to be like. I think it's definitely time to get out of that. So I'm sure that's probably a huge theme when you're doing body image and whatnot. Just like, I know this up here, but I'm carrying it in a different way here, right? And so it's just like, okay. And you know what? Health is just like, that's the key at the end of the day. I was talking to a 68-year-old woman that had knee surgery at the gym, and she like cares for herself, and she survived this knee surgery, and she's like, I barely am bouncing back. And I was like, and that's why we stay healthy, just for those things in the world, not what they've taught us to look fake healthy for. But thank you. Like I really appreciate the message today being around like just don't try to figure out what it is or isn't, but just try to be in it, be curious when these feelings turn up, because we turn them down constantly. So, just notice what's happening. That awareness that you talked about is such a big thing for us to connect that mind and body. And so I love everything that you shared today. And for everyone else, we say these conversations are door openers. We're just having them, and we would love to get feedback so that we can continue having conversations like this. So if you have anything to add, you know where to find me. You now know where to find Nikki. I will have your Instagram and TikTok info in the show notes. Any last words, my friend, before you say see you later?
No, I'm just like so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I love this conversation. I feel like so great. And it's just so refreshing and like beautiful to have these conversations. So thank you so much for inviting me into your space and having me here. And I'm super grateful.
Oh, and I feel the same. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.